Hi, this is Kimberly. Welcome to or back to my channel. If you're the sort of individual who cringes when someone chatters, babbles, and rambles incessantly with regard to incidental matters, that means you'll want to jump ahead and go straight to the Dr. Oz videos. There are timestamps below in the description for your reference. What I've done for today's video presentation is piece together all of the Dr. Oz clips I could find where he and his expert guests examine Kris Watts. I contend there used to be many more clips and segments, but they've disappeared without a trace, and sadly I don't have them on my computer. The reason I've compiled this video is the one that I posted a few months back with neighbor Nate is one of the most played videos on my channel. So, in all likelihood, Dr. Oz and Friends appeals to people, especially when talking about Kris Watts. It's hard to find these, as I said before, and I wonder why so many have seemingly been deleted from the interwebs. I do remember one with Nancy Grace, and probably because she wants it with her stuff. I don't know, but Dr. Oz puts small snippets of clips on his channel and elsewhere on social media, so in order for it to make sense, one must piece it together. So I did. Dr. Oz touts on his site, watch every Tuesday and Thursday as Dr. Oz investigates the most shocking scams and crimes sweeping the headlines. Now, I don't know when or where or how Dr. Oz went from discussing how your poop should look, remember you're supposed to turn around and look at it before you flush, to him being a gumshoe. If you're curious as to why we are called gumshoes, it's because back in the day, a detective would have footwear made of gum rubber for creeping about, being all quiet and shit. And then later on, gumshoeing was meant that you were just being quiet and sneaking. One might do this so they could prowl and rob folks. If they weren't gumshoeing to catch bad guy criminals, that is. They could go either way with their gumshoes on. I always picture a black shadow of myself, although of course slimmer, but a black shadow of me tiptoeing hither and yon with a magnifying glass. That would be my logo, if I were to have one. Oh, I have many visions of myself, and I fancy myself strolling through the grounds of our estate, deadheading spent flowers. Okay, stumbling about our uneven suburban yard, hoping I remember where the sinkhole is, and pulling some weeds and slinging them into the neighbor's yard. It's practically the same thing, damn it. But I rarely seem to get around to all the activities I envision for myself. It just never transpires for some reason. Boom, there goes one more day. Well, I'll do it tomorrow. As a little girl sitting alone in my bedroom, waiting for the day to pass, I would take old 45 records. Well, they weren't old then, but I'd place them on the carpeted floor and move them back and forth so as to gather dust and lint from the floor on top of the record. Next, I'd place it on the turntable or the record player and watch as the dust and lint gathered on the needle. Then I'd pick the dust off the needle. You know how kids are. I don't listen to music anymore. It makes me sad. I listened to hours and hours of music as a child, out of boredom and to drown out the loneliness as I waited for my brothers to get home from school to torment me and make me scream. This always woke my mother, who would start rushing around to make dinner before my father arrived home, promptly at 6:10 every evening. I did the record playing thing after I had read every book I had, which I knew by heart, did all my puzzles, which I knew by heart. I was able to put them together with the pieces facing downwards. This is how well I knew all of my worldly goods. We didn't possess as many as the kids today do. Just a few, and they were all cherished. We weren't poor, it's just that one did not drown their children in possessions like they do today. Every toy I had was neatly placed back in the box and placed back into my closet. I must not have been ADHD then. I knew each thing I had inside and out. Then I'd move on to my mom's bedroom and periodically try to wake her. Not succeeding, I'd open her jewelry box and look at each piece and carefully place it back exactly where it was so she wouldn't know that I'd been in there. During this phase, I'm not sure how old I was, but I know I had not started kindergarten yet. I can recall early in my life, standing in my crib even, smelling food and hearing people talking, wondering when someone was going to come and get me. I'm referring to our old house in Atlanta before we moved to the suburbs. In 1968, I believe it was. Our house in Atlanta was a 1920s craftsman-style house, rather big, and it had been divided up so it had 2 apartments that my parents rented out. It's still standing. My bedroom with my crib was constructed from the old kitchen pantry, my brother tells me, and I also hold very vivid memories of living in that house. Many. One of which was hiding behind a green leather-like couch with books of matches and eating the tips off of them. Not sure what that means. I looked it up one time and stopped. I think it was like a vitamin deficiency or something. Although I'd get in trouble for it, the toddler in me performed it repeatedly. It's not like I was, 12 or 30 or anything. I wasn't able to stop myself. I don't know, but I did finally outgrow it, though. As I grew up, I spent many alone hours watching television, too. I still love all the old black and whites and prefer them to anything else. It's a nice escape for me, most likely because it's a fantasy. I fashioned myself in my mind as a beautiful combination of Donna Reed, Barbara Billingsley, and Jane Wyatt. She was the wife of Marcus Welby. Robert Young on Father Knows Best. Barbara Billingsley, of course, was the Leave It to Beaver mom, and Donna Reed from the Donna Reed Show. Oh my God. I wanted a house just like on the Donna Reed Show. Or the one from Father Knows Best. Any of them would have done. I always felt such a sense of sadness when the show would go off, when they'd have their happy ending and the music would play, and if I wanted it to keep going on. I just loved those shows. And I'd sit and eat candy or something sweet. I still do. Some of you haven't the foggiest idea of what I'm going on about. I couldn't wait to begin, though, my journey into being a black and white TV mom. I couldn't wait to begin. How I ever dreamed this possible, having grown up in the 60s and 70s and married in the early 80s, is beyond me, but I was going to be a black and white TV mom. I wonder if my mother ever noticed me pining after these other mothers. No, she was usually sleeping off a hangover or physically sore from one of her tantrums. But back to what today's offering is on the subject of. Some of the aforementioned shit you may have experienced before due to my disorganizational challenges. Meaning you might have watched some of this Dr. Oz stuff, and if so, well, it bears repeating, right? So if it pisses you off, get over it. If you've already seen it, you can just ignore it and carry on. You can bitch me out below in the comments, or send me an email I won't read for 4 months. Imagine that. Black and white TV shows at gmail.com. And then I'll just let your email sit in my inbox for a while because, well, I want to reply, but I'm a procrastinator. More or less the following year, or maybe in a few months, or in time, I will ultimately delete it so I can forget the whole thing and relieve myself of some guilt for not answering the email. Today's video includes scribbles. It's her piece where she sits on stage with Dr. Oz and her resting bitch aura and embellishes and sometimes outright lies about the Kris Watts case and her letters to and from Christopher. You know, she was declared a plagiarist, and apparently Dr. Oz and staff, they don't care or take an interest in. They don't give a shit of matters of this kind. At its core, we're addressing ratings. Views, if you will, just like on YouTube. Do you see the consistency here? You sell out, compromising your decency, uprightness, or principles in exchange for personal gain, in most cases money. When you sell yourself out, you undermine your integrity for quick gain. Don't do that shit. Anyway, that's all I can bear to say concerning scribbles today. I mean, I just don't have the energy to conjure up and pretend she's a writer. If she was a vegetable, she'd be a cabbage. But there are more coming in the future that will be starring scribbles. Probably one more video, I think, and then I'll leave her alone. Maybe. But I must report to you of my YouTube tangle with her. I'm just not going to allow time for this type of shit. So hopefully she's learned her lesson. Or she will have by the time I do that video. So, kindly take pleasure in today's potpourri of clips relative to the buffoonery, brainlessness, evil corruption, wickedness, and deadly criminality of Kris, his face, piece of whale shit, son of a bitch, Watts. And if you don't take pleasure in today's potpourri of clips, just click onto another video or onto another fucking channel that will just delight the shit out of you, okay? Always, there is one rule for my channel. Don't be a fucking dickhead. Make it two. Don't tell me what to do. You're not the boss of me, with my channel or otherwise. Unless you want to tell me like, toodaloo, take it easy, cheery goodbye, or some cordial shit of that banner, then you can tell me what to do. But not like, instead of doing yet one more CW video where you're milking the case dry for views, blah, 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 fill in the blank. Of course, you dumb motherfucking ding-dong. Everything I post here is for views. What the fuck is having a YouTube channel if you don't do it for views? What, am I going to post a video and then say, God, I hope no one watches this? No, hell no. That's fucking ridiculous. Oh yeah, you know what you can do with your advice? This is what you can do as an alternative. Write it down on a nice piece of stationery. Skillfully fold it 10 different ways. Stick it in your ear and blow it out your ass. I didn't see a fucking suggestion box around here anywhere. Did you? Oh, oops. Am I being rude? If I am, so what? People are rude to me all the damn time. I try to be nice, but when someone says or does just the right thing in which I deem is entitled subculture, rude and disrespectful behavior, I turn into bitch on wheels without notice. You are advised. So if it occurs where I flip the switch, that means you have at least one unbearable personality trait that the human population agrees with me and we all find it revolting. You are one who is incredibly boring, stupid, self-centered, and basically an overall pain in the ass. You suck. And lastly, you are a dumb fuck. Not only dense, but also rude in their actions. The composite of dumbass and asshole used to save time after explaining a frustrating event. That'll be all for now. You know how I dart from one subject to another, and I wasn't talking about you. 'Cause I love you. Much love and peace. Thank you for listening.
Kris Watts is currently sitting in a cold Wisconsin prison, serving 5 life sentences for the murder of his wife, Shanann, his 2 little girls, and his unborn son. He was convinced to plead guilty, thanks in part to his next-door neighbor, providing police with surveillance footage that showed him mysteriously loading his truck the morning his family disappeared. Kris's former neighbor, Nate, who had that camera, joins us now. Nate, you're one of the few people who interacted with Kris Watts before and after he committed this crime. So while police were still searching for his wife and daughters, Kris and an officer came over to your house to see the security footage in question. Here's a quick recording of that.
And this is him at 517.
Park out there on the side. I just want to get everything back in. Be easier, so lugging everything out there, all the tools that I had to bring in. What else can I do with this?
My detective just showed up, so he'll probably want to talk to you.
I have your mark right here.
Yeah. So someone,
See if
I can see
anything
where
happens.
someone tried to jim me with a flathead screwdriver.
Oh, it'll pick up anything coming down the street this way.
You know where that trigger is?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Watch, I'll show you.
It is so bizarre watching Kris ignore the footage as you showed it to him and the police, and he starts to fiddle around and futz. At what point did you begin to realize he actually could be a murderer?
At first, I don't think I realized that he was a murderer as much as I think he had something to do with this situation. I didn't really start thinking about that till after the fact, when I started talking to my wife and started talking to everybody and going over the footage and seeing how he acted. That's when I really started to think that there was something really wrong.
As I watched that bizarre video of him sort of ignoring what clearly was being shown, which is his implication in the murder of his family, it must have impacted you enough that you might have some trepidation that evening. What was your last conversation like with Kris?
The last conversation I had is when I met him in the street, and he told me that this didn't look good on him and that he was the last person to see them. And all I did was act like I didn't have any inclinations that he did anything, considering he was still at the house and I was concerned about my family. So I pretty much told him that I was just worried about the girls and I hope for their safe return. And if anything I can do to help them, please let me know.
Do you think Kris Watts is even capable of feeling empathy for the innocent lives that he destroyed?
It'd be hard to say if he felt it or not. He sure didn't act like he felt any empathy. But as a human being, you'd hope he felt some side of empathy, considering he destroyed his whole family. But my personal opinion on him is I don't think he feels empathy for it as much as he feels that he needs to try to figure a way to get out.
Well, Nate, thank you very much for speaking honestly and being a good people watcher, and for having that video.
Thank you. Have a great day.
How do you put your minds around this documentary and what they uncovered?
Very difficult to do so. What is a person, a husband, a father's top responsibility, right? To protect your family, to support your family, to uplift your family. And what's shocking most to me is the disconnect between the appearance and the reality. You look at the appearance and you look at a family so in love, so together, so looking forward to a future. You look at two beautiful daughters, a pregnant woman, his wife, loving him so much. He has their trust. He has their love. He has their respect. And so to think about how you can portray that in such a vile way is just totally remarkable. And it reminds us that notwithstanding what you might see on social media, notwithstanding what's depicted in a picture, when you delve deeper into the issues, perhaps there's something amiss.
Not be able to reciprocate at all. I mean, she's trying to get him broccoli and preparing dinner. He's planning her murder.
Yeah, you know, this documentary was so hard to watch because in most cases like this, the victim is just a picture. They're just a face in a photo. We don't know anything about them. But through this documentary, we really felt like we got to know Shanann and understand what kind of person she was. This was a woman who was so fiercely dedicated and devoted to her family, so devoted to her children and also to Kris. We see it in small ways, like her texting him. I mean, how considerate is that? What kind of vegetable would you like? What would you like me to buy you at the store? But we also see it in much bigger ways. Her texting a friend and confiding that he was refusing to have sex with her and that she would cry for hours over this rejection. This was someone who was desperate to keep her family together, and no matter what she did, he would not make it work.
How can he have energy to do all those push-ups and not desire to be intimate with his wife?
There was something very wrong there, and she knew there was something very wrong. And I think as a woman, when you're watching that, you connect with that. A woman knowing something's not right.
Intimate. After failing a polygraph, Kris Watts made his first confession to his father, Ronnie, though he only admitted to killing Shanann and then actually tried to pin the murder of their daughters on her. I bet he said that because he made them blue. I bet that stuck in his mind. Trey, would that ludicrous argument have worked in court?
I really don't believe so, Dr. Oz, for a number of reasons. The first of which was her family could certainly attest to how vested she was in him, in her children, in making everything work, making it better. Her friends would be able to attest to that, right? There are interviews that you have with people, and they would say, what's her state of mind? Where was she? So for that reason, absolutely not. There's another. You look at these social media posts, she's just such a beautiful, loving, caring, committed, you know, we're going to take on the world, you know, I'm putting my life back together. I had a husband before, it didn't work, I'm moving on. And you look at what she wanted to do with her life, her future, her family. So why would she do this? It wouldn't work for that reason. And finally, Oz, he's the guy out there, not committed, having an affair. You look at her background. Her background is about her family, her future, and what that meant to her. So there's no way, in my view, that this would have hunted in court.
So we now know Kris Watts to be a monster. He pleaded guilty and will spend the rest of his life behind bars. But shockingly, women are still interested in him. Now, I'm always stunned by this, Mara, but what have you learned? How can someone be attracted to a man like this?
This is shocking, but sadly, it's very common. We see this every time there is a high-profile crime like this. These murderers get groupies. And since this documentary has come out, Kris Watts has reportedly got an influx of mail. Now, I should note, he has not seen the documentary, and he's reportedly very upset about the idea that his personal text messages and personal videos are being seen by the world. Poor, poor baby, right? But it has led to him getting this influx of mail. Now, some of it is offering spiritual support. God bless those people. They're saying they're going to pray for him. But some of it is for women who are romantically pursuing him, and he is responding to them, because what else does he have to do?
Is forensic psychologist and author of Evil Thoughts, Wicked Deeds, Dr. Kris Momandlé. Kris, when Kris Watts first confessed, he claimed that he said that Shanann had smothered their kids, so he killed her in retaliation. Is that likely a planned lie, or think it was just something he came up with in the moment, in a crisis?
I think that statement that he made was something that he made up in the moment. That his original story was that they had simply disappeared, that his wife had left with his daughters, and upon talking to his father, he came up with that on the fly, a face-saving lie to blame his wife for the murders of his daughters, and then ultimately his reaction to that, which allows him to save face and make him seem like a stand-up guy, was that he just lost it like anybody would, in protection of his daughters. But he did not even refer to his daughters as my daughters. He said these girls, which I found noteworthy in that clip. I mean, it suggests a level of detachment, not owning the fact that he is their blood, he is their flesh and blood. And that speaks to something very wrong with him and his capacity for attachment.
That's a good pickup. Despite committing this horrific crime, Kris Watts agreed to take a polygraph test, which, well, not go well for him. Take a look.
I mean, I hope that, if you did have something to do with their disappearance, it would be really stupid for you to come in and take a polygraph today.
Exactly.
Right? Like, it would be really dumb.
And the coolest thing about this is right now, there's only one person in this room that knows what the truth is. And in about 5 minutes, there's going to be 2 of us. So that's the coolest part, okay? And then I can go share that with them out there, okay?
Okay.
Are you lying about the last time you saw Shanann?
No.
Do you know where Shanann is now?
No.
But I really need your breathing to be normal.
Okay,
you are like all over the place, so.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I have that. I don't want to do that. So.
Yeah. I just need it as normal as possible and not fluctuated, okay?
Okay.
I mean, he's trying to game the system. He's clearly nervous. Why would Kris agree to a polygraph knowing he's covering stuff up?
Well, she says it would be real stupid for you to come in here and agree to a polygraph if you're lying. But he only thinks it's stupid if he doesn't think that he's smart enough to outsmart it. He thinks he's smart enough to outsmart and employ countermeasures to defeat the polygraph. That's what the breathing issues are all about. He's apparently read or researched the polygraph and is trying to thwart the test through modifying his breathing. Now, one could argue maybe he's nervous, maybe that's what's going on, and she's commenting upon it, but I really think it's him employing countermeasures. He knew he was going to lie, he thought he could outsmart it, and she caught him.
In the Netflix documentary, we see Shanann go into heartbreaking detail about the one-way emotions in her relationship with Kris. I mean, she talks about the lack of intimacy, of touching. She tells a friend that Kris is more focused on a push-up challenge than on sex. And I think, Kris, a lot of relationships unfortunately involve infidelity or intimacy issues, and people get divorced. Why did this one end up with horrific murders?
Well, I think Kris was a very selfish person. I mean, when she's texting him as she's coming home from out of town, asking what kind of vegetables he wants, it should be the other way around. He should be saying, welcome home. You know, what can I do for you? And it's centering all around him. So you have extreme selfishness. And he's the kind of guy that looks like, you know, he was trying to posture himself to be out there in the dating world, to be able to have, you know, flings and extramarital relationships, but without any kind of responsibility. And sad as it is to comment upon for me, I really believe he just looked at his daughters, his wife, and his unborn child as future payments that he'd have to make that would interrupt his ability to live the free life that he wanted to live. So we were talking about extreme selfishness, and we're talking about a variant of narcissism. Whether he was full-blown narcissistic or not, don't have enough information, but clearly his selfishness is part of what led to these murders.
So Kris eventually told authorities he snapped. That's the word he used, snapped, after telling Shanann he wanted the relationship to end. But in prison letters published last year, he claimed that a demon or a darkness came over him in the weeks leading up to the murders that made him feel like he could kill anything and be justified for doing it. So Kris, how do you, put this together for me. Do you think this was a horrifying spur-of-the-moment decision, or did he premeditate the murder of his wife, 2 daughters, and unborn child?
Well, I don't think this was spur of the moment at all. The only thing spur of the moment was the lie, you know, that, he had found out that his wife had killed his daughters and then killed her in return, which makes no sense given the fact that then why do you need to conceal it by disposing of bodies? You know, that doesn't make any sense. No, this was pre-planned. He was looking to live a life without the impediments of having to make child support and spousal support payments in all likelihood, not having any kind of attachment, so he could just do what he wants when he wants to do it. So I do not think it was spur of the moment. I think he planned it. I think he thought he was smart enough to get away with it, and he wasn't.
I want to move away from this murderer and ask about the new reports of his prison pen pals. I'm stunned by this. What kind of person becomes romantically involved in a convicted killer who murdered his wife and children, a person with no chance of freedom?
Well, there are those that hope that they can rehabilitate people like this, you know, kind of ultra supreme do-gooders. But I think what we're talking about more often are those that are attracted to notoriety, that like, you know, supremely bad guys. And the idea here is that this guy is infamous and that they derive some excitement and stimulation from that. It boosts their egos. But at the same time, it's safe because they know that he's never going to be able to get out and get to them. So it's a sick and twisted form of groupie behavior where you've got people that unfortunately are attracted to serial killers, notorious murderers like this guy. We see it all the time. It's always perplexing, but deep down inside, you know, it's a person that is looking for that kind of excitement, but without the real danger. It's pseudo danger. And they know that they can control him, and there's like this perverse, you know, exchange between the two parties.
What made you want to write a letter to a convicted murderer?
Initially, I assumed he was a monster and he did this. And then as I looked into the case more, I just, from watching the videos and how he interacted with his wife and children, there just was something there, and I just had this feeling that he did not commit this crime.
Dear Cheryln, I arrived at the 𝐊𝐢𝐧𝐜 County Jail the night of August 15th.
Kris Watts, his letters from jail, and an Oz exclusive.
Is he admitted that he actually killed his daughters, not once, but twice?
His words, his details, his confession.
When he put his hands on her neck, he couldn't let go.
On today's True Crime, Colorado dad Kris Watts horrified the country when he confessed to brutally murdering his wife, Shanann, their unborn son, and their daughters, Bella and Celeste. Now, in his series of prison letters, he's revealing shocking new details about his crimes for the first time. Today, I'm sitting down exclusively with the woman who received these letters from Watts, so we can understand, why would a father do this? Watts was sentenced to life in prison, leaving Shanann's devastated family and friends with so many questions. In search of answers, recently retired grandmother Cheryln Cadle approached Watts to take part in a book she was writing about the case. Surprisingly, he agreed. The result? Startling new first-hand confessions Watts made to Cadle in letters and during visits she made to him in prison. Today, Cheryln Cadle shares insights into what really turned Kris Watts from a seemingly devoted husband and father into a cruel, cold-blooded killer. Cheryln Cadle joins us now. She's the author of the new book, Letters from Christopher, The Tragic Confessions of the Watts Family Murders. Cheryln, you've never written a book before. You've never even reached out to a prisoner. No. Why Kris Watts?
I don't know, just seeing him the morning of, on the front porch when he was looking for his family and telling the TV cameras that they just vanished. I knew by watching him he was guilty. It was easy to see that he was. And I felt something. I felt called to write this story to help get in his mind enough to see why he would do something like that to his family.
Shanann's family is also arguing that you promised to send them a copy of the book before it was seen widely, an advanced copy. Is that true?
No, it's not. I asked their attorneys if they would like to have a voice in the book. I was told no, that they would not. And I understood that. It was so soon after the crime. My heart hurts for those people. So I understand anger and upset, but I told him if she didn't want to have voice in the book, that I would not be letting her read the book before. And so that's the way we left it. They never got a hold of me again.
Do you feel that you've treated Shanann's family fairly, in your mind?
Oh, absolutely. I've done nothing to hurt them. My book is not in any way bashing Shanann or the girls. My heart hurts for these people. I have nothing in the world against them in any way. And I just hope that if I've hurt them, that they will forgive me of that, because I didn't hurt them intentionally. I wanted the truth to be told to them so that maybe they can move forward with their lives.
Thank you for being with us. You can read more of Cheryln's conversations and letters with Kris Watts in her new book, Letters from Christopher, The Tragic Confessions of the Watts Family Murders. Now, coming up, Kris claims that if he'd never met his mistress, he wouldn't have committed these murders. But where is his ex-mistress, 𝐭𝐿 today? And are there signs that Kris would kill again if given the opportunity? Stay here. In a shocking letter to author Cheryln Cadle, convicted family murderer Kris Watts described previously unknown details of his horrifying crime. August 13th, morning of. I went to the girls' room first, before Shanann and I had our argument. I went to Bella's room, then Cece's room. I used a pillow from their bed. That's why the cause of death was smothering. After I left Cece's room, then I climbed back in bed with Shanann, and our argument ensued. After Shanann had passed, Bella and Cece woke back up. I'm not sure how they woke back up, but they did. We're back with the latest on convicted killer Kris Watts. The Colorado father is serving 5 life sentences for killing his wife, unborn child, and 2 daughters. Here with the latest are investigative reporter 𝐊𝐢𝐴𝐵𝐿𝐿, CNN and HLN legal analyst and defense attorney Joey Jackson, and crime correspondent Melissa Moore. So, I appreciate you all coming. It's a sensitive topic. We have these letters. This is the first time being released to us, so we have deeper insights into what was going on in Kris Watts' mind. You've read these letters, you've heard the stories, Cheryln's comments earlier. Mara, what do you make out of this? What stands out the most to you about his tone? And I'll pass these letters down.
Yeah, you know,
we've all seen them.
In reading these letters, we realized that these crimes were even more horrifying than we'd initially realized. When I was reading these letters, I literally felt nauseous. And one of the most nauseating things about them is his tone, the completely matter-of-fact way that he describes committing the most awful acts that a human being can commit, completely emotionally detached. So I wanted a little
little bit of insight into that. So I reached out to a forensic psychiatrist, Dr. Clay Watson, and he said that these letters show typical signs of a psychopath. That psychopaths don't view people as people, they view them as objects to be manipulated. And another thing that stood out to me with the tone was the ego, the tremendous ego and arrogance of Kris Watts. And it's no surprise that he agreed to be part of a project that at least in part was supposed to be about his redemption, because Kris Watts cares about one person, Kris Watts.
And I have a problem with these letters, actually, a really big problem. As I read them, I realized something similar to my father. And when I did the podcast Happy Face, it was a journey about, for me, to find out the true narrative of what really happened with my father's crimes. Because at the end of the day, this is from Kris Watts. He's the one speaking for the victims. And what makes this gospel? What makes this truth? This is propaganda for his agenda. He is a narcissist. This is pushing forward what he wants to be pushed out into the world. And that's what I have a problem with.
I couldn't help but notice that he's in jail for 5 life sentences.
Right.
That's what your father's in
Same
jail
as my
for.
father, right? Right.
Do you think your dad would have hurt you the way this man hurt his family?
Well, see, that's what was interesting for me. When I was going on my journey, my grandfather, before he passed away, at the kitchen table, matter of factly told me, you know, your dad had confessed to me that he thought about killing you kids. So I asked him, what did my dad say that to you? And he said it to me, actually, after he was arrested and when he did a prison visit with him. And my grandpa looked at me like, that's unbelievable. And so... But I thought the same too. I thought, like, how could we think about our parent being able to kill us? Like, it doesn't seem fathomable. You can't wrap your head around that. So I always had a question mark, is that possible? Well, my father murdered 8 women, he tortured animals, and I learned that sociopaths, psychopaths, they compartmentalize things. So, you know, you're safe if you're not a threat. It's all self-driven. It's all about them. And so if I was a conflict to him, to my father, and I had to be getting rid of, I would be in the way and he would have gotten rid of me. And there was chances for him to. He almost confessed to me the murders. And if he did, then I would have gone to the cops like he said I would have, and I wouldn't be here today. So I believe my father, absolutely, after reading these, I believe my father really, truly, that's not being over dramatic, he would have killed me.
Jerry, what do you think of, as a defense attorney, about Kris Watts participating in this book, writing these letters? I mean, just saying things, these letters that are just unfathomable, unconscionable.
Yeah, it's shameful. So there's 2 ways to answer it. The first way is whether or not he, has a right to do it. The second issue is whether or not he should do it. Now, obviously, everyone has a constitutional right to say what they want, right? We're in a free country. You can say, do what you want, and that's okay. But the other thing has to do with whether it makes it right and makes it fair. Now, why should we expect anything less, right? Or anything more from a serial killer, right? Or, to me, in my view, you're killing your family. That's serial enough for me. But the fact is that it comes down to basic decency, right? I will stand up every day in a court of law. I will defend someone's rights. Thereafter, there's a day of reckoning. That reckoning comes, and it came in this case with his plea of guilty, right? Where he acknowledged his guilt. Sometimes it comes before a jury, when members of the jury say you're guilty. Thereafter, I think there's an atonement period, and I think you have to be very respectful. There's a family here that suffered a grievous loss. Unimaginable, a 4-year-old, a 3-year-old, she's pregnant, he kills his wife. How could you do such a thing? What kind of human being does that? And then to come out, and to your point about speaking about it, like, it's you and I just having a conversation in the park. What message does that send? I think it sends the wrong message. I think it's not fair, it's not appropriate, it's not right, and I think it further condemns him. And so he's serving 5 life sentences. You know what? If he could serve more, it should be.
Let me open this issue up to the whole panel. I'm still fascinated that this man did not appear to have a history. Yes, this is his story, his propaganda, but there doesn't seem to be anybody else saying that he was a bad apple before this all started. He's claiming a demon or an evil or darkness came into him. He says it in these letters. Every one of these letters, look at them. They're all, God bless you, I wish you and your family a wonderful time. I mean,
that's manipulation.
It might be.
Yeah, that's clearly manipulation.
What do you think of this demon idea, your take on that? It is, in many faiths, fundamentally something they believe.
But here's what's certain. He is demonic. There's no question about that. But the idea that a demon possessed him in a temporary way and that he's now free of that and filled with the Spirit of God is really unbelievable. And the reason for that is that he doesn't seem to be remorseful. If the Spirit of God was filling you and that demon had fled, you would be on your knees every night crying buckets of tears about your lost family. This man seems only to care about himself, his image, and his future, which he seems to think one day will involve freedom. Yeah. This man is a narcissist.
I don't think there's anything to do with the supernatural, with demons. This is science. This man didn't just snap. He didn't just start ruminating right before he killed his family. This is something that was percolating years before this. This kind of psychopath, this kind of narcissism and grandioseness, this isn't something that he just developed. This is something that this is nurture and nature coming together. You know, from my study of psychopaths, we learned that there is a genetic part of this. So I believe he was predispositioned to do this, that something, the motive of being with Nikki drove him to do this. What I found fascinating—
Nikki the girlfriend.
Nikki the girlfriend. What's fascinating to me too is that the psychopaths aren't really, they're cookie cutters of themselves. I could basically say, put his name in for my dad. Like, they're the same. And then when I read the letters, my father chased after his mistress after prison. I believe part of his motive for these letters is a reach out to the mistress to come back to him and start talking to him.
Oh my goodness.
He talks so much about Nikki, you know?
Yeah, I don't see this as a genetic issue. I see this as an issue that relates to him and his way out. The fact is that I think this is something that he was very self-interested. He wanted a way out. You can blame things on demons and blame things on spirits, and the hardest thing to blame is on yourself. And that's what I think he overlooks. The fact is that he made a conscious choice. We all make conscious choices every day. That conscious choice was to get rid of his pregnant wife, was to, you know, completely, and I think everyone here who has children, we would die for our kids every day and twice on Sunday. Not him. Yeah. What does he do? He decides, because he wants to gallivant and do whatever he's doing, that he has to get rid of them, and therefore he kills them. So I don't see demons, I don't see spirits, I don't see witches. I see an individual who wanted a way out. This is the way he took, and as a result, that's why he's serving 5 life sentences.
Kris Watts convicted of murdering his pregnant wife and 2 daughters. How well do you know your spouse? We have a daytime exclusive with his neighbor who handed over the video.
Watch, I'll show you.
That led to his arrest.
It's one of the most deplorable murder cases I've ever heard. A pregnant mother, Shanann Watts, and her 2 daughters, Cece and Bella, killed at the hands of her husband, their father, Kris Watts. Today, an exclusive interview with a neighbor close to the family, who's now being called a hero for helping police put Kris Watts behind bars. What made a man most people thought was a loving husband and dad turn into a killer?
The story shocked the world. A devastated father pleading for the return of his pregnant wife and their 2 small daughters, who'd vanished after his wife returned from a weekend business trip. If you're out there, just come back. If somebody has her, just please bring her back. I need to see everybody. I need to see everybody again. To the outside world and on social media, Kris and Shanann Watts appeared a picture-perfect couple, shown smiling together with their 2 young girls and happily anticipating the birth of their 3rd. The police investigation would also uncover a secret, sordid flip side to the family man facade that included multiple mistresses, financial turmoil, and possible psychopathy. Kris Watts ultimately pleaded guilty to felony charges related to his family's murder.
The most inhumane and vicious crime that I have handled out of the thousands of cases that I have seen.
Watts was sentenced to life in prison, leaving Shanann's devastated friends and family with many unanswered questions. What really turned Kris Watts from a seemingly devoted husband and father into a cruel, cold-blooded killer?
Nate joins me now. He lived next door to the Watts family. He provided security footage that was instrumental. It's a piece of evidence in the case. He joins me now in a daytime exclusive interview. When you first heard that Shanann, your neighbor, Cece, Bella, these beautiful little girls, were missing, what did you think? What went through your mind?
At first, I couldn't believe that they were missing.
if they were. I didn't know at the time if they were missing or not. So basically what I did was went to my security camera footage, checked it out, went back to the police and told them basically what I had, and they eventually wanted to come in and look at it.
Diligent of you. I'm going to congratulate you and thank you for this, because we all have more power than we think. This is a great example. A neighbor realizes the problem, takes advantage of whatever resources he has, and you end up changing the destiny of this case. How would you describe Kris Watts as a neighbor? And if you don't mind, Shanann and the girls as well, what were they like?
Kris was real quiet. He would always wave, or I'd sometimes talk to you. But he was you could tell he was kind of standoffish. There was times when he just didn't want to wave or didn't want to say anything, but usually he was nice. And Shanann was always really friendly. She came over, welcomed us to the neighborhood. The girls were always running around, laughing, having a great time.
So nothing seemed out of the ordinary?
No, nothing at all.
And when you first looked at that security footage, and you saw that this truck had backed up in the morning that they disappeared, you never saw the kids leave, or Shanann, but you saw the truck back up. What did you think he was doing?
He said he was loading tools, but I thought that was a little bit odd because I had never seen him really back his truck into the driveway ever. He always parked it out front. So I definitely thought it was kind of odd. And then when you saw him loading stuff into the cab of the truck and never anything into the back, I really thought that was definitely odd.
Is that when you began to think maybe those are bodies he's actually loading into this truck?
I don't know if at that point in time I thought it was bodies, but at the time I thought stuff wasn't adding up.
So you showed the footage to the police, right? and then you showed it to Kris Watts.
Yep.
And that encounter, I should point out to everybody, was recorded. You know how police have those body cams? So a police officer body camera recorded this. So take a look at what that camera showed.
And this is him at 517.
Park out there on the side. I just want to get everything back in. Be easier, so lugging everything out there, all the tools that I had to bring in. What else can I do with this?
My detective just showed up, so he'll probably want to talk to you.
I have your park right here.
Yeah. So someone, I can see where someone tried to jimmy with a flathead screwdriver.
Oh, it'll pick up anything coming down the street this way.
You know where that tree is?
Oh, yeah. Okay. Watch, I'll show you.
So we're all watching that behavior that you were there for. What did you think of that encounter with Kris?
It was definitely very odd. I'm more of a watcher. I watch people more than, talk to everybody. I kind of sit back and watch. So to see him putting his hands on his head and see him nervous, looking around, constantly on his phone. The other thing I thought that was definitely weird was he wasn't watching the footage at all. He would look at it for a second, then go back to his phone, or look at it for a second, then look away. And if my family was missing, I would be glued to that TV 100% to see if I could see absolutely anything.
Those are incredibly profound observations. That's right. I'd be glued, trying to get ahead of the case, not trying to keep up with it.
Yeah, I would have been on that TV seeing if there was anything that showed anything about my family. And the fact that he wasn't watching it at all, he kept looking up and looking around and petting my dog and stuff like that. I just thought that was odd.
I'm going to say it again, but you reflect the power of what seems like an ordinary man.
Yeah.
You're not a detective.
No.
Right? You're not a police officer.
By no means.
But you picked up on a lot of subtle things that I hadn't thought of till you mentioned them up there. I bet most of us hadn't.
Yeah, I definitely just thought it was odd, the way he was acting, and he was kind of swaying back and forth a lot, putting his hands on his head, and he accidentally knocked his sunglasses down, and just little stuff like that where I was like, why are you so nervous?
Yes.
You should show more concern than nervousness.
I know you've talked publicly in the past about hearing Kris and Shanann argue, and you made a commitment, which I'm proud of you for making. I'm not speaking about it in detail. Why?
I don't want everyone to look at this case and think, oh my gosh, they argued all the time. That's not what we're focused on. I want to focus on Shanann and the girls and what a great life they had. Instead of, oh my gosh, they fought all the time. He was so mean to her. at the time, I embellished a little bit as far as they fought constantly, and I didn't want that to come out that way. It was more like they didn't fight any more than any other couple. I mean, yeah, where houses are so close, it's kind of hard not to notice when people are outside and doing stuff like that. But it wasn't like he was constantly yelling at her. He was super mean. They had a couple confrontations that I happened to see, but it was never him being this big, huge monster. And I've just noticed on social media, they really focus on that, and that's not what I want to focus on.
It's not right for the family either. I honor you for trying to protect them.
Thank you.
Up next, Nate weighs in on the rumors about Kris Watts' alleged secret relationships. And what does he think about him now? Let's talk about these other rumors regarding Kris. There's a rumor that he has had other girlfriends, and there's a rumor that he had a sexual relationship with another man. What are your thoughts on those two allegations?
I didn't really know at the time he had a girlfriend, because from the outside, it looks like a normal, everyday family. Husband's going to work, coming home. So I didn't really know much about that. And as far as a relationship with a male, it seems kind of odd to me, considering he had pictures of his girlfriend, stuff like that. So I just don't believe that that happened.
You knew Kris Watts when you thought he was a normal guy.
Yep.
But now that you're aware of the brutality of the crimes that he committed against his wife and his beautiful children, and even an unborn child, what do you think of him now?
Part of me thinks he's a monster. For you to be able to do that to your wife, and especially your kids. Like, I love my son more than anything, and I could never see myself hurting him at all.
Yeah.
And the fact that he could go out of his way to take her life and the kid's life and then act like nothing happened and try to cover it up just shows his character.
So he got sentenced to 5 consecutive life sentences.
Yes.
With no chance for parole. You think that's what he deserved?
After talking to her family, Shanann's family, and finding out that they felt like it wasn't their place to seek the death penalty. And my personal opinion on it is I think sitting in a jail cell thinking about what you did every day is a lot more punishment than sitting on a death row and constantly thinking about your case and how I'm going to beat it and how I'm going to... It would give him other things to think about instead of what he should be thinking about, which is his family and what he did to them.
I really want to applaud you.
Thank
Not
you.
just for what you did, but it reminds all of us the power each of us has. God bless you.
Is this a person who can act without any remorse? Is this a person who does little things that sort of leaks information to say, okay, you don't have your ring on, you don't have any problem with sleep, you're acting sort of strange during the watching a video as we saw previously. But the other piece that's important here is the brutality in which he carried out these killings. And again, it's hard to imagine that a father and a husband can do these things, but the brutality that can come usually comes in these killings from a high emotional state. And that emotional state may be due to extreme panic or anger or extreme resentment.
But here, I mean, tell me if you would agree with this, doctors. This man is so cold and calculated. Most people want to move on. They know they can go and get a divorce. Here he decides he doesn't want to be tethered with alimony, visitation. And so what he decides to do is to take their lives of these people that were supposed to be those that he cherished the most.
The nucleus around
But
him.
what's haunted me too, what's haunted me the most is that he was able to sleep at night with his girls in those oil bins. And I heard from the authorities when they tried to retrieve the little girls that one of the little girls' hands degloved. Like that, I mean, there's moments in cases that are so, there's just parts of cases that stick with you. And I think for those, the people who had to retrieve them, that they have to remember that, you know.
You think that Kris Watts would be unable to do things most of us can do just with that eating at him?
Mm-hmm.
He was interrogated for hours by police before finally admitting to his own dad that he killed his wife. Look at this gripping footage.
And well, no, that's not her.
I mean, I'm just thinking about the father putting his hands like this as he hears his own son, his own flesh, tell him that he has killed the grandkids and the daughter-in-law. What does this tell us about what was going on in the mind of Kris Watts?
At that point, Kris Watts has to survive. He's in survival mode. So everything that he says at this point forward is all about self-preservation. So he is talking to his father and giving his father one story, gave police another story. And in all of it, and very much similar to the killings and the disposing of the body, everything is about his wants and needs above all else. So he's going to do what he needs to do because he wants to realize a new life. He can't realize the new life without telling more lies. And so if we go through all the steps that was necessary from the time of planning the killings, to carrying out the killings, to disposing of the bodies, to then trying to avoid detection, most of us, the vast majority of individuals, are not capable of the degree of compartmentalization that's needed to carry out those things. And now he is being interrogated. And he has to be able to come up with a story, and that story is all about his own self-preservation so he can move on to his new life.
But don't you think there was manipulation there too? Because if he tells this to his father, then his father will somehow have a twist of empathy, like he was trying to keep his parents on his side.
But it's really something that as prosecutors we always say that at the certain points that a defendant or suspect will admit what they have to and deny what they can. He knows the gig is up. He knows they're going to know something based. So what can he quickly switch gears and tell a story that maybe gets him out of most of this? So that's what you almost see. He wants this new life. He knows that he's not going to walk away scot-free. So he came up with a new story that he tried to enlist his father's support.
And the story was that his wife had actually already killed the kids.
Exactly.
Right.
So you hear my wife is the monster and I, as this loving father, snap when my children have been taken from this woman, and now out of my state of just incredible anger at what she did to my children, now I went ahead and killed her.